I look like a bald baby and I should probably do my hair, but I really don't feel like it. And if I do not do my review of this baby here and compare it to the fan fiction it's based off of, then I will never get to it. So that is what we are doing today. Hi, my name is Teresa, and we're talking about Reylo again. This is my second comparison review of Reylo fanfiction that was turned into publishing. First, it was my roommate was a virgin vampire compared to my roommate is a vampire, and today it's going to be the Hurricane Wars compared to Landscape with a Blur of Conqueror, which is, I said in the last video, a line from a T.S. Eliot poem.
Hey pal, you just blowing from Stupid Town?
I was wrong. It is a line from a Richard Sicken. Is that how you say his name? Richard Sicken? A Richard Seekin poem. It is a line from a Richard Seekin poem, which honestly makes a whole lot more sense than T.S. Eliot. I don't know where I got that from. I'm gonna be straight up. I really, really enjoyed what I have currently read of Landscape with a Blur of Conqueror by, I believe, Thea Guanzon's username is Disasterisms. I really, really liked what I read so far. You will notice I said so far because I have this as a PDF on my phone, and I am currently 500 and something pages into it, and that's out of 2,000 plus pages. So I saw someone say that the Hurricane Wars ended at a specific point, and I had already gotten to that point in the fan fiction. So I was like, okay, I need to put this down and actually read the Hurricane Wars so I can do a review comparing the two. So the writing in the fan fiction was really, really good. I really like the attention to detail that Guanzon puts to the senses, describing the senses, and you can immediately tell if you are a Star Wars fan just how much care she put into the story, because it's not an alternate universe story. It is kind of canon compliant. It's supposed to happen, and it was written shortly after The Force Awakens. I believe. I might be wrong on my timeline there. So Rey has not found out her parentage yet. In this, she finds out that she is the lost princess of this planet, which is an actual planet in the Star Wars universe. It might be Legends. I couldn't tell you. I wasn't that deep into it. And they're scared of the Force, and they use these Force suppressing lizards to make sure that nobody can use the Force. And there's mention of like fighting style. They mention Makashi duelists. They mention so many like small details that I don't feel like, if you're unfamiliar with Star Wars, I don't feel like it's too alienating to where you wouldn't understand what's going on. Like, she does a very good job of immersing you into the world, even if you are unfamiliar with it. At least I think so. I am familiar with it. So who's to say? I personally, being familiar with it, I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe she did that. It's not just focused on the characters of Rey and Kylo Ren. It is focused on the universe of Star Wars, and you really get those like nuggets, those callbacks, and just I liked it a lot from what I read, and I really liked their dynamic. So in it, the First Order wins the war basically, and the Resistance has to go into hiding. And this is after Rey has figured out that she is this princess. So she makes a deal with the queen of this planet to let the resistance hide. The space to get to the planet is very tumultuous, so it makes it hard for the First Order to follow them. So that is where they hide in exchange for Rey training to become the heir and doing her duties. The queen is her grandmother, and her father is the prince, but it is a matrilineal line, and her mother was an outsider from the planet. She's from Dathomir, which has a bunch of force sensitive people on it. So that explains how Rey has that connection to the force. I feel like I'm rambling. Anyways, so she does that. Kylo basically becomes the puppet king of the First Order Empire that they've established, with Snoke being like the puppet master. And eventually, the Empire now has to incorporate the planet that Rey is on, and it comes to having to do an arranged marriage. I liked it. I liked the exploring the family dynamic because, like I said, it is set after The Force Awakens, so there's the mystery of Rey's family, and I really liked the family that Thea Guanzon gave her in the fan fiction. And I also really liked the struggle that we saw from Kylo in regards to Leia. I really liked the romance too. I thought it was very engaging and very interesting. So that is what I have to say on the fan fiction. I very much liked it. It was great. So for the Hurricane Wars, there was a lot that Thea Guanzon had to do to make it different than her fan fiction. And she introduced some interesting element that I was like, oh, this is really, really cool. But I don't believe that the Hurricane Wars went deep enough with these for them to really make a difference at all. For the Force, she changed it into this like elemental magic system. Think the Grishaverse, think Avatar The Last Airbender and bending. So they tap into these elements, and the element that our character, Taliesin, our main girl that we're following, Taliesin, she is a light weaver, so she can control light. And there are these sources of magic that are like natural energy in the world. They call them severs: air, light, shadow, and she is the last of her kind, at least with shadow and light. I don't know about the others because it's not explored very well. They can create weapons from this magic. They call this in general. So we have light weavers, we have I don't even remember. Shadow forged. They call all of this the umbrella of magic. The wide umbrella of magic, aethermancy, which all that's very, very cool, but it's not super, it's not explored very much, unfortunately. And the issue that I have with it not being explored very much is that the plot that we are given, the main crux of the problem that this book sets up, has to do with a new form of aethermancy. So you would think that the others would be explored more so we could have a better foothold into the world, but it's not. It seems like the magic system is kind of like in the Grishaverse, where these are like small sciences. It's not like in Avatar, where it is a spirit world is connected to it and stuff like that. It's just, I don't know, it's very, very vague, unfortunately. In the Hurricane Wars, we have our two characters. We have Taliesin, who is still on the side of a resistance. The resistance is called the Sardovian Allfold. She is still kind of new to her power. She is an orphan who was scrappy and had to survive and then join the military. And in there, at some point, she figured out that she was a light weaver. And there comes a point where she meets our Kylo Ren figure, who is Alaric, that's his name. She meets Alaric on the battlefield, and that is where the story starts. And it's from Alaric's point of view. And at the very beginning, he says the shadow could only fall when there was no light to banish it.
I'm just thinking about how this sea bass is cold, but not as cold and cruel as the hands of fate that have thrust my entire life into darkness.
And I was like, sick. That sounds great. Is that a part of a prophecy? No. He is just being like super dramatic. For some reason, the Shadow Forged and the Light Weavers, well, they give a reason. I just don't think it's very compelling.
Very well. My thoughts are, who cares?
They are at odds with each other. And when he sees her and when he realizes that she is a light weaver, he makes it his mission to take her out. And his father is on board with it because the whole reason that the Shadow Forged and the Light Weavers are opposed is because the Light Weavers led an attack on the Shadow Forged and killed the Night Empire. By the way, that's what the Shadow Forged are called. We have the Sardovian All Fold is the resistance. Then we have the Night Empire, which is where our Shadow Forged, our Shadow Daddy and his daddy.
Hello, Daddy? Yes, Daddy. No, Daddy. Daddy!
Oh my gosh. That is what they are a part of. They are the Night Empire. There's another name that they have, the Dominion. No, that's not right. So yeah, they're the Night Empire. And the Light Weavers, who have no affiliation to either side, because we have the Sardovian Allfold, who is kind of like a bunch of different peoples, a bunch of different Aethermancers, and they are there. And then we have the Night Empire, which is headed by Shadowforge, but they also have different Aethermancers because you need certain Aethermancers to fuel your airships, shipships. Honestly, I'm kind of confused about what kind of ships they use. It is kind of confusing. But yes, the reader is not given any context as to the importance of Lightweavers. And besides a personal grudge, there is no reason for them to be so focused on one girl. And they are really focused on getting her, while also the Allfold, the people who know that she is a light weaver, are like, oh my god, they know what you are, so they are going to come after you now because you're like super important. They make it seem like she can dismantle the Night Empire just by being the last light weaver. But the premise is still the same in that the Allfold loses their battle to the Night Empire. They have to retreat to this island nation that, yes, Taliesin is the heir to. Same structure as in the fanfiction. But in this one, Thea Guanzon couldn't do the space field, the airfield around the planet is too dangerous for people to trek into. So instead, there's a myth in this world that nobody messes with them because they have dragons. So cool, so much potential. Do the dragons matter? No. Because they're like, they have dragons, they're dangerous. Do they control the dragons? No. Do the dragons make an appearance? Do they play an important role in the book? No. Does it just make things all the more confusing? Yes. So the resistance retreats to this. The Allfold is able to hide on an island, a smaller island that is harder to get to because of winds, and it's really hard sailing. So again, confusion on whether it's airship or a water ship. And the Night Empire eventually does come to this island, which is called the Dominion, that is like the nation, and they are like, oh, you need to surrender. And they're like, well, why don't you, new Night Emperor, even though your dad is still alive, and it would completely make sense if he was a prince, why don't you, Alaric Night Emperor, marry my granddaughter and let us do what we do and you don't interfere with what we do? And they're like, sure, no prob, you got it, dude. So in the comparison, the fanfiction at this point, and from what I'm reading, doesn't have an overall plot. For the Hurricane Wars, which I have right here, I don't know why I haven't shown it yet, have it right here. So in the Hurricane Wars, Thea Guanzon had to come up with a plot, a story arc to go off of to make this an actual 500-page book. The plot that she comes up with is, instead of the force suppressing lizards, remember those? Instead of having force suppressing lizards, they have birds, which are, they're like aether suppressing, and they're aether suppressing because they have a form of aethermancy themselves, which they call void fell. You keeping up?
Father, this guy stinks!
So there's the void fell, which these birds have, and they keep those in cages, and that suppresses both Alaric and Talison's aethermancy while they're on here. And there's this phenomenon that happens once every 500 years, every set number of years, that the Void Sever will release Void Fell magic in mass, and each time it happens, the discharge is larger and larger and larger. And this is a problem because when it discharges, the Voidfell magic kills everything that it touches. And the Dominion has kept this secret from the rest of the continent and the rest of the world because it hasn't become a problem yet, and they have safeguards against it. But with this next one that is coming up, it is supposed to be bigger than ever, and they have figured out that Alaric and Talison's magic together can shield against the effects of it. So they're trying to find out a way to have them work together and have them figure out how they did this accidentally this one time, how they can replicate that. And so that is the main point, is that they are trying to get Taliesin, one, more in control of her powers because she is newer to using her light weaver magic because she didn't use it for so long. She was in hiding. She couldn't let the Night Empire know that she existed for some reason. Two, her and Alaric have to work out this marriage deal, which honestly, I really like the politics of it all in both the fanfiction and this. So yeah. And then three, they have to work together and figure out how to replicate this and replicate it in mass so that it protects as much as possible. And that is kind of the setup for this entire book. It is a lot to throw at a reader. There is so much that needs to be set up, and to do that and also to execute a good romance, I think is too ambitious. I don't think Guanzon did so successfully. And I think part of that is because she did not cut out enough scenes from the fan fiction when she published the book. There are a lot of scenes that are beat for beat the same without much differentiation between them, and it is not needed because the goal of the fan fiction is the love story. It is these two characters falling in love. You don't need to do a setup. When you do need to do a setup, you need to decide how much needs to be cut, and not enough was cut from this. And as well, you don't need to have the characters get together in the first book. I think that was a big disservice to the story. I think it really actually hurt the story. It did become mainly about the romance, which if you like the romance, if you like romantasy and you don't need a lot of world building, you might like this. You might not though, because this book is not a book. It doesn't have an ending. The plot that I just laid out is not resolved in the book. Now, of course, there's a larger plot, like what's going to happen to the Resistance because they're still hiding. What's going to happen between Alar and Taliesin because they do get married in this book. If she made this just the plot is that they need to get married by the end, then that would work. But she didn't. She set up this whole thing with the Voidfell in this impending event, which doesn't happen. So it will probably happen in later books, but it doesn't happen in this book. And so it's just like, what's the point of setting it up in in a book if you're not going to deal with it. A book, even if it's a part of a series, should be able to stand on its own and have a conclusion. And this doesn't. And not having a conclusion in fan fictions is fine. Fan fiction is very loose plot. It's mostly scenes filled with tension and intimate action between the two characters with a little intent to move the story along. But that is fan fiction. And that isn't to say that all published work needs to have plot. I love some work that is just vibes, but to set up a story arc and not finish it is crazy. And it's not like, and the thing is that this is the plot that she chose is a fated event that is to happen. There is nothing that the characters can do to stop this. So the book just ends up being tension and training. There could have been assassination attempts because there is a lot of dissent about these two characters having to marry. There could have been so much more intriguing plot lines instead of having this fated event that just doesn't give the characters much agency besides waiting for it to happen. And then it doesn't happen in the book. I hate it. I don't think that's a satisfying ending. It's so annoying. To compare the two further, I mentioned before that I thought the fan fiction was really interesting in terms of the family dynamic of the lost princess returning and her having to figure out how she fits into this and figuring out what loyalty she owes to her grandmother, to her father, and kind of navigating those relationships. But unfortunately, I didn't get far enough into the fan fiction to see if that really makes an impact at all, like if she dives further into it. And the book just doesn't do that. Like, you know, the grandma is shady and the father is very sweet, but Taliesin cares little about them because she thinks about Alaric randomly. The amount that these two think about each other in times that are not appropriate, like there's no reason for them to think of each other, is crazy. Obsessed. There were very little things of the Hurricane Wars where there was language established to determine like passage of time. They mentioned Sennight. There's a Sennight and then there's a fortnight, and I was just like, is there a difference between the two? I know what a fortnight is. I don't know what a Sennight is. And I wasn't given any context clues to figure out what a Sennight is because I thought it was a fortnight, but apparently it's not. I wasn't a huge fan of them being immediately drawn to each other when all he has tried to do is kill her, and same for her. They have this draw to each other and they're just like, oh my god, I shouldn't be thinking about him. Why am I thinking about her? And it's just like, yeah, why are you thinking about her? In Star Wars it made sense because Kylo Ren is the son of someone that he killed that was important to both of them. And he's the son of Leia, who is a mentor figure to her. And he's the nephew slash former mentee of her mentor, Luke Skywalker. So there's so many more connections that would have them thinking about each other. But in this, there's no reason that you should be thinking of this prince who is trying to kill you and all of your friends. Guanzon got rid of a few characters that appeared in the fan fiction and like in Star Wars. You could kind of tell who was supposed to be who from each. But in the Hurricane Wars, we have Alaric have basically the backstory of Prince Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender. His father is cruel and sees him as a disappointment, and his mother runs away from them. His mother is just like, I really don't like what your father is doing, so I'm outie.
That's rough, buddy.
And can't blame her, honestly. But he has mommy issues because of that. He has daddy issues. So we don't have a Han figure. The Leia figure is someone who defected from the Night Empire. So she's Shadow Forged. I don't know if she has any connection to Alaric. That was not revealed in this book. There is no Finn character. There is no There is no Poe character. There is no Rose character. He does have his Knights of Ren people with him. This book was just a mess. I gave it a 2.7 stars on Storygraph. On Goodreads, I gave it a 3 because I was being generous, because if a little bit more time was spent on this, I would have loved this. I did like parts of the romance. I didn't care for the sex scene. That oh yeah, I didn't care for the sex scene. She made them both virgins in this, and this man was able to make this woman come the first time they do it together with no experience, and he's not like, there's just no way that would happen. And there's also the element of big man, small girl, and I didn't like it. And it also happens like 50 pages from the end of the book, so I didn't like that either. Could have just not had it. I can't even remember in the fan fiction at the point that I ended if they actually have done more than like make out. And when they have sex in this, it is just a hand job for both of them. Yeah. But that being said, I like most of the banter between them. I did think that there was some tension. If it had an ending, it would have gotten 3 stars. Since it doesn't have an ending, it got 0.25 stars. Oh my god. I do like her writing in this too. There are some times where it is a lot, but for the most part, I liked it. I might read the next one because if she can figure out how to plot things, then I think I would enjoy this a lot, but not right now. I would gladly read a Thea Guanzon Star Wars tie-in novel. I think she would be great with that because, like I said, in the fan fiction, you could really tell how much she loves the franchise. If you like Star Wars smashed with Avatar: The Last Airbender and the Grishaverse, aka Shadow and Bone, and all those, then you might like this. Next up, I will be reading The Love Hypothesis and the fan fiction that that was based off of. And then we will have a wrap up on my thoughts of these books overall and how fan fiction, specifically Reylo fan fiction, is doing in the publishing space. Thank you for watching. Bye.